The lights of the Galactic Council chamber dimmed as Grand Admiral Javrak settled his 6 appendages onto the observation platform. Around him, representatives from 1,000 worlds fell silent, their attention locked on the massive holographic display dominating the center of the chamber. For 3 millennia, the Galactic Empire had reigned supreme across known space, their technological prowess unchallenged by any species foolish enough to resist assimilation. Until now. Counselors, esteemed members of the Imperial Court, Javrak began, his voice amplified throughout the cavernous space. What you are about to witness defies all known laws of stellar engineering and weapons development. Our long-range observation posts in the Orion Spur have captured footage of something impossible. The hologram flickered to life, revealing a massive vessel unlike anything the assembled dignitaries had ever witnessed. Its hull gleamed with a material that seemed to absorb and refract light simultaneously, creating a shimmering effect that made it difficult to determine where the ship began and where it ended. But it wasn't just the material that sent murmurs rippling through the assembly. It was the sheer audacity of the design. The humans call this vessel Prometheus Unbound. Javrak continued, his normally steady voice betraying a hint of disquiet. Our intelligence suggests it represents merely the vanguard of their 3rd fleet. Science Minister Tilara rose from her seat, her crystalline form catching the light. Impossible. The humans were barely achieving controlled fusion when we established the containment zone around their system 3,000 years ago. This vessel appears to be manipulating gravitational fields on a scale that our theoretical models cannot explain. That is precisely why I have summoned this emergency session, Javrak replied. The containment protocols have failed. Not only have the humans escaped their solar system, but they appear to have developed along technological pathways entirely foreign to our understanding. The hologram zoomed in on propulsion structures that defied conventional understanding, not the expected ion drives or antimatter reactors, but something far stranger. The engines seemed to fold space itself, creating ripples in reality that the Council's instruments struggled to measure. Where did they get such technology? Demanded War Chief Grax, his chidinous exoskeleton clicking with agitation. Which of our rivals has been supplying these primitives with advanced designs? A soft laugh echoed through the chamber. All eyes turned to elder historian Venlo, the oldest living member of the council. The ancient being hobbled forward, leaning heavily on a staff carved from the heartwood of a long-extinct tree. You misunderstand completely, Venlo said, waving a gnarled hand through the hologram. No one gave them this technology. The humans have developed it independently, and that is what terrifies you all, though you lack the wisdom to name your fear. The council erupted in protests, but Venlo continued undeterred. 3,000 years ago, I advocated against the containment policy. I suggested we invite humanity into the galactic community, guide their development along paths we understood. I was overruled by those who saw only primitive beings barely worth studying. The hologram shifted to reveal more human vessels, each stranger than the last. One appeared to be composed entirely of crystallized energy fields. Another seemed to phase in and out of conventional space-time, appearing in multiple locations simultaneously. How many ships have they built? Someone called out. Javrak's upper appendages twitched uncomfortably. Our estimates suggest their combined fleet numbers in the thousands, and they're expanding rapidly, establishing outposts in systems we had marked for future colonization. Ambassador Lyertan of the Commerce Guild rose, her feathered crest flattened in distress. Have they shown hostile intent? Perhaps we can establish diplomatic relations, offer trade agreements. We intercepted this transmission 3 solar cycles ago, Javrak interrupted, gesturing to his aide. The hologram changed to display a human, a female with dark hair pulled back severely from her face. She wore a uniform adorned with symbols that the Imperial translators were still deciphering. Her expression was neutral, but her eyes burned with unmistakable intensity. This message is directed to the governing body known as the Galactic Empire, she began, her words automatically translated for the Council. I am Fleet Admiral Chen of the United Earth Federation. Our long-range sensors have detected your observation posts monitoring our expansion efforts. We are aware of your containment policy and the 3 millennia during which you have observed our species while preventing our development beyond our home system. The Admiral paused, and despite the vast distances involved in the recording, many council members shifted uncomfortably under her gaze. That containment has now ended. We have surpassed the technological limitations you attempted to impose. We do not seek conflict, but neither will we accept constraints on our exploration and expansion. The stars belong to all sentient species, not merely those who arrived first. The message ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Elder Venlo's laughter once again echoed through the space. 3,000 years of arrogance, and now we face the consequences. While we stagnated, believing our technology had reached its pinnacle, the humans evolved in isolation, taking paths we never considered. Shivrak turned to face the council, his compound eyes reflecting the holographic display of the human fleet. We face an unprecedented situation. A species we deliberately isolated has not only escaped containment but appears to have developed technologies that may surpass our own. The question before this council is simple. How do we respond? War Chief Grax slammed a clawed appendage onto the table. The answer is equally simple. We must mobilize the Imperial Armada and eliminate this threat before it spreads further. With what weapons? Venlo challenged. Did you not observe their vessels? Our weapons may be entirely ineffective against technologies we do not understand. As the debate intensified, a junior communications officer rushed into the chamber, bypassing security protocols in his haste. He whispered urgently to Shivrak, whose appendages suddenly went rigid with shock. "Counselors," the Grand Admiral announced, his voice cutting through the arguments. "I have just received word that a human diplomatic vessel has entered the Kyrnath system. They are requesting permission to send representatives to address this council directly." The chamber erupted into chaos. Some demanded immediate military action. Others called for diplomatic engagement. A few simply sat in stunned silence, contemplating the end of 3 millennia of unchallenged imperial dominance. Only Elder Venlo remained calm, his ancient eyes fixed on the holographic display of the human ships. "Invite them," he said quietly, though somehow his voice carried over the tumult. "Invite them and listen carefully to what they have to say." For in 3,000 years of isolation, humanity has clearly learned something that we, for all our supposed advancement, have forgotten. The council fell silent, awaiting Shivrak's decision as the human diplomatic vessel drew ever closer to the heart of the empire that had once thought itself invincible. Shivrak's innermost heart pulsed erratically as he watched the approach vectors of the human diplomatic vessel. Unlike their warships with their reality-bending geometries, this craft appeared almost deliberately conventional, a gesture of diplomatic courtesy, perhaps, that only heightened his unease. "Security protocols are insufficient," War Chief Grax insisted, mandibles clicking in agitation. "We cannot permit unknown biological entities direct access to the Imperial Conclave." Science Minister Tilura's crystalline form shimmered as she interfaced with the central monitoring systems. Scans indicate the vessel contains 12 human life forms and no detectable weapon systems. However, the hull composition is blocking deeper analysis. "They could be carrying anything," Grax hissed. "Bioweapons, infiltration nanites, mind-altering pheromones." Elder Venlo tapped his ancient staff against the polished floor, drawing attention. "If they wished to harm us, War Chief, they could have deployed their main fleet rather than a single diplomatic craft. Fear is clouding your judgment." The massive doors to the council chamber parted, admitting the Imperial Protector Corps in full ceremonial armor, an 8-unit formation of the Empire's most elite guards. They flanked the entranceway, energy staves humming with latent power. "The humans have accepted our security provisions," Shivrak announced. "Their representatives will be escorted directly to the diplomatic circle. No technology will be permitted beyond the screening chambers." Ambassador Learton adjusted her feathered crest nervously. Have the translation matrices been calibrated? We must avoid misunderstandings. Before anyone could respond, a hush fell over the chamber. The human delegation had arrived. They entered without fanfare, 6 individuals walking with the confidence of those accustomed to the weight of authority. At their head strode a tall figure with copper-colored skin and silver-streaked black hair, wearing a uniform similar to the woman from the transmission but adorned with additional insignia. Admiral Chen sends her regrets that she could not attend in person. The leader announced in flawless galactic standard, requiring no translation matrix. I am Diplomatic Envoy Rodriguez of the United Earth Federation. We appreciate the Council's willingness to receive us. Whispers erupted throughout the chamber. The humans had mastered galactic standard, a language deliberately kept from their containment zone. What else had they learned while the Empire wasn't watching? Grand Admiral Javrak composed himself and performed the formal greeting gestures. The Imperial Conclave acknowledges the representatives of humanity. You stand before the governing body of 13,000 systems, spanning 3 spiral arms of our galaxy. Rodriguez nodded respectfully. And you stand before representatives of a single system that has spent 3 millennia wondering about the stars you denied us. The directness of the statement silenced the chamber. Javrak felt the discomfort of his peers radiating like heat. Perhaps, Elder Venlo interjected gently, we might begin with an explanation of how humanity circumvented the containment protocols. For academic purposes, you understand. A slight smile crossed Rodriguez's face as he gestured to one of his companions, a woman with deep brown skin and eyes that seemed to evaluate everything simultaneously. Dr. Harper specializes in what we call trans-dimensional physics. She can explain the technical aspects better than I. The scientist stepped forward, her movements precise and measured. Your containment field operated on principles of conventional space-time manipulation. Effective, certainly, against a civilization bound by those same principles. Our breakthrough came when we stopped trying to break through the barrier and instead learned to step around it. Tulara's crystalline form pulsed with agitation. Impossible. You cannot simply step around fundamental physical constants. Not around constants, Dr. Harper corrected. Around assumptions about what constitutes dimensionality. Your civilization developed along a technological path that treats space-time as the medium through which all interactions must pass. We discovered alternate channels. The implications stunned the Council into silence. If humans had indeed discovered fundamental physical principles unknown to the Empire's brightest minds, the containment failure was merely a symptom of a far greater concern. This still doesn't explain your advanced shipbuilding capabilities. War Chief Grax challenged. No civilization progresses from primitive fusion to trans-dimensional engineering in mere millennia. Rodriguez exchanged glances with his team before responding. Necessity drives innovation, War Chief. When your exploration options are artificially limited, you dig deeper rather than wider. Our scientists focused intensely on theoretical physics because practical expansion was denied to us. Elder Venlo nodded thoughtfully. Ironic, our containment policy may have accelerated the very development we sought to control. We didn't come here to discuss the past, Rodriguez said, his tone shifting subtly. We came to negotiate humanity's place in the galactic community moving forward. Javrak sensed the pivotal moment approaching. And what exactly does humanity seek from the Galactic Empire? Recognition, respect, and restitution. The final word sent shockwaves through the assembly. Ambassador Lyertan's feathers flattened completely against her skull. Restitution. For what precisely? 3,000 years of deliberate suppression, Rodriguez replied evenly. 3,000 years of denied cultural exchange, trade opportunities, and scientific collaboration. 3,000 years during which 17 human generations lived and died without knowing they were being observed like specimens in a menagerie. War Chief Grax rose to his full height, intimidating even by the standards of his predatory species. You dare to make demands of the Galactic Empire. Your civilization exists in a single system. Ours spans a third of the galaxy. Rodriguez remained unfazed. Geography isn't power, War Chief. Not anymore. Would you like a demonstration of what our single system is capable of? The air in the chamber seemed to thicken with tension. Shavrak prepared to signal the Imperial protectors when Elder Venlo's laughter once again broke the moment. Bold, so wonderfully bold. The ancient being wheezed. 3 millennia of stagnation, and these humans bring us exactly what we need. A challenge to our complacency. Shavrak shot the Elder a warning glance, but Venlo continued. Tell me, Envoy Rodriguez, if humanity possesses such technological advantages, why seek diplomacy at all? Why not simply take what you believe you are owed? For the first time, Rodriguez's composure slipped slightly. Something like sadness crossed his features. Because we found your historical archives, Elder Venlo. We know that before the Empire's current policies, before the containment protocols and isolation mandates, the galactic community once stood for something greater. We found records of the Golden Era, 10,000 years of collaborative prosperity among diverse species. He paused, looking around the chamber. We didn't come to demand restitution through force. We came to remind you of what the Empire once was, and could be again. The council chambers fell into a stunned silence. How had the humans accessed the Imperial historical archives? Those records were stored in the most secure data vaults in the capital system, protected by security measures that would destroy the information rather than permit unauthorized access. Shavrak felt the ground shifting beneath centuries of Imperial certainty. The humans hadn't just escaped their containment. They'd been studying their captors all along. Elder Venlo's ancient eyes gleamed with something between amusement and hope. I believe, Grand Admiral, that our agenda for this session has only just begun. The Imperial Conclave adjourned to the deliberation chamber, leaving the human delegation under the watchful eyes of the Protector Corps. Through the transparent barrier separating the chambers, Shavrak observed Rodriguez conversing quietly with Dr. Harper, their expressions unreadable. 3 millennia of separation, and yet these humans carried themselves with the ease of seasoned galactic diplomats. They'd been watching us far longer than we realized, Tilera said, her crystalline form pulsing with agitation as she joined Shavrak at the observation point. The archives they referenced were sealed before my great-grandmother's emergence. No outsider should have access to those records. Shavrak's upper appendages twitched nervously. The implications are unsettling. If they can penetrate our most secure information networks, then our military networks are likely compromised as well, finished War Chief Grax, mandibles clicking rapidly. I've ordered a full security assessment of all Imperial defense systems, but if they truly possess trans-dimensional capabilities as they claim, the unfinished thought hung heavily in the air. For the first time in living memory, the Empire faced an unknown they could neither quantify nor control. Elder Venlo hobbled toward them, his ancient eyes alight with an enthusiasm that bordered on inappropriate given the gravity of the situation. You're all missing the most fascinating aspect of this encounter, he said, tapping his staff against the floor for emphasis. And what would that be, Elder? Ambassador Lyertan asked, her feathered crest still flattened in distress. These humans could have emerged from their system with weapons blazing, demanding vengeance for our containment policies. Instead, they've chosen diplomacy and appeals to our better nature. Venlo chuckled. They've studied not just our technology and language, but our history and values as well. Before anyone could respond, a junior communications officer burst into the chamber, his exoskeleton flushed with the biochemical markers of extreme agitation. Grand Admiral. Emergency transmissions from the border monitoring stations in 7 sectors. Shavrak felt his primary heart constrict. Report. The officer extended a trembling appendage, offering the secure data module. Human vessels have appeared near major trade routes throughout Imperial space. They're not moving to engage, but they're everywhere, sir. The Imperial leadership huddled around the holographic display as it revealed the positions of human ships throughout territory the Empire had considered secure. Not dozens of vessels, not hundreds, but thousands, each bearing the same inexplicable technology as the Prometheus Unbound. This was their plan all along, Grax hissed, his combat spines extending involuntarily. The diplomatic mission is merely a distraction, while they position their fleet for a coordinated strike. Talara's analytical processes worked visibly through her translucent form. That doesn't align with their behavior. If attack was their intention, why reveal their positions? Why not strike simultaneously with this meeting? The chamber doors slid open once more, admitting Envoy Rodriguez. He walked calmly to the center of the deliberation circle, seemingly oblivious to the tension his presence ignited. "I apologize for the intrusion," he said, glancing meaningfully at the holographic display, "but I thought it might be more productive if we discussed the fleet deployments directly." Shivrak fought to maintain his diplomatic composure. "You assured us your intentions were peaceful, yet we now find human warships positioned throughout Imperial space. Explain." Rodriguez nodded, his expression grave. "Those aren't warships, Admiral. They're refugee vessels." The statement landed like a physical blow. Shivrak struggled to process its meaning. Refugees? From what threat? For the first time, genuine emotion broke through Rodriguez's diplomatic facade. A flash of something ancient and pained crossed his features before he composed himself. "From what comes next," he said quietly. "Admiral Chen authorized me to share this with you now, given the circumstances." He held out his hand, palm upward. A small device rested there, curved metal no larger than a coupling claw. Before anyone could object, he activated it. The holographic display shifted, no longer showing fleet positions, but rather a view of deep space, unlike anything the Imperial leaders had ever witnessed. Stars were moving, folding in on themselves, creating patterns that defied conventional astronomy. 3 standard days ago, our long-range sensors detected this phenomenon at the edge of what you call the Sagittarius Arm, Rodriguez explained. "Something is coming, Admiral Shivrak. Something that frightened humanity enough to accelerate our expansion plans by 5 centuries. Elder Venelo moved closer to the display, his ancient eyes reflecting the impossible stellar movements. "The Harbinger pattern," he whispered, his voice suddenly frail. "It's not just legend after all." Shivrak turned sharply toward the Elder. "Explain." "There are records predating even the Empire's founding," Venlo said, his usual mischievous tone replaced by something approaching reverence. "They speak of a time when stars moved of their own accord, heralding the arrival of something else, something neither organic nor mechanical, but possessing aspects of both." Rodriguez nodded slowly. "We found those same records in your archives. That's why we're here." For one terrible moment, perfect silence filled the chamber as the full implications became clear. The humans hadn't escaped containment to challenge the Empire. They'd escaped because they'd discovered something that threatened not just humanity, not just the Empire, but perhaps all life in the galaxy. The command center erupted into frantic activity as Imperial technicians scrambled to verify the human data against their own long-range sensor networks. Shivrak watched as the confirmation reports flooded in, each one validating Rodriguez's terrifying revelation. The stellar anomalies were real, and they were accelerating. "Why didn't our own monitoring stations detect this?" Talara demanded, her crystalline form fluctuating with emotional distress. Rodriguez exchanged glances with Dr. Harper before answering. "Your sensor technology operates on principles that filter out certain types of phenomena. You've been looking at the universe through a narrow band of perception." "Convenient," Grax snapped, though his aggressive posture had diminished somewhat. "So only humans can perceive this supposed threat." Dr. Harper stepped forward. "Not at all. Once you know what to look for, your existing technology can be recalibrated. We've prepared modification protocols." A deafening alarm cut through the chamber, its resonant tone penetrating even the soundproofed walls of the command center. Imperial officers froze, their expressions shifting from confusion to horror. "That's impossible," whispered Tilara. "That's the Sovereign Alert. It's never been activated outside of drills." Shivrak felt his appendages go numb. The Sovereign Alert, a direct communication override from the Imperial Sovereign himself, bypassing all chain of command. In 3,000 years of service to the Empire, he had never heard it activated. The central holographic display flickered, replaced by the towering figure of Sovereign Exceltor. Even through the projection, his ancient presence commanded absolute attention. The Imperial leaders dropped immediately into prostration postures. "Rise," the Sovereign commanded, his voice carrying the weight of millennia. "The protocols of deference are suspended in this time of crisis." Shivrak felt cold dread seeping through his circulation system. For the Sovereign to suspend protocols that had remained unchanged for 12,000 years. "Grand Admiral, you will confirm. Are there humans standing in the Imperial Command Center?" "Yes, Sovereign." They came as diplomatic. "Listen carefully," Seltor interrupted, his massive eyes shifting to focus directly on Rodriguez. "The humans are not what they claim to be." A stunned silence fell over the chamber. Rodriguez remained perfectly still, his expression unreadable. 3,000 years ago, the Sovereign continued, the containment protocol was implemented not to suppress human development, but to quarantine it. What stands before you is not a diplomatic envoy. It is the vanguard of something ancient and terrible that infected humanity in their earliest development stages. Elder Venlo straightened, clutching his staff for support. "Sovereign, with all respect, I remember the containment decision. There was no mention of infection or quarantine, because the knowledge was restricted to the Sovereign line alone," Zeltor replied. "What you see in those stellar anomalies is not some external threat arriving. It is the final phase of what began on Earth 3 millennia ago." Rodriguez finally moved, a sad smile crossing his face. "We wondered if you knew," he said softly, addressing the Sovereign directly. "We wondered if the containment was ignorance or intentional." The air in the chamber seemed to thicken as Rodriguez stepped forward. The Imperial protectors raised their weapons, but with a gesture from the Sovereign, they held their fire. "Sovereign Xeltor speaks partially true," Rodriguez admitted, his voice changing subtly, deepening, resonating in ways that human vocal cords should not allow. Humanity was indeed changed 3 millennia ago, but not infected, evolved. Dr. Harper and the other human delegates moved to stand beside Rodriguez, their formations suddenly seeming deliberate rather than casual. "The stellar anomalies are not the arrival of something new," Rodriguez continued. "They're the awakening of something ancient, something that has been sleeping since before the first Imperial ancestors crawled from their primordial oceans." Shivrak found himself reaching instinctively for his sidearm, only to freeze as Rodriguez turned to look directly at him. The human's eyes now reflecting pinpoints of light that mirrored the impossible patterns of the moving stars. "We didn't escape your containment because we developed trans-dimensional physics," Rodriguez said, his smile widening slightly. "We escaped because we remembered what we truly are." The chamber fell into profound silence as Rodriguez's words hung in the air. The human delegates stood together, their eyes now uniformly reflecting the same stellar patterns visible in the holographic display. Even the Imperial protectors seemed frozen, weapons half-raised but unmoving. "What are you?" Shivrak finally managed, his voice barely audible. Rodriguez, or whatever now wore Rodriguez's form, smiled with genuine warmth. "We are the custodians. Before your empire, before recorded galactic history, we watched over the evolutionary arcs of sentient life throughout this galaxy. We are neither conquerors nor destroyers. We are gardeners." The Sovereign's massive holographic form loomed over the gathering. "They speak half-truths. 3,000 years ago, our deep space astronomers detected their awakening within the human species. We implemented the containment protocol to prevent the spread of their influence." Dr. Harper stepped forward, her eyes reflecting the same impossible light. And in doing so, you committed your greatest error, Sovereign. Isolation didn't contain us. It concentrated us. Without the distractions of galactic politics, humanity focused inward, accelerating the very awakening you feared. Elder Van Loo leaned heavily on his staff, ancient eyes widening in realization. The Golden Era archives. They weren't just records of a more collaborative time. They were evidence of your previous manifestation, weren't they? Yes, Rodriguez nodded. 10,000 years ago, we guided the early galactic civilizations toward cooperation and shared prosperity. We withdrew when we determined your species had reached sufficient maturity to continue without our guidance. War Chief Grax found his voice, though his usual aggression had been replaced by something approaching awe. And what happened after your withdrawal? Entropy, Rodriguez replied simply. Without guidance, the collaborative systems we established gradually gave way to competition, then domination, and finally, the imperial model that has ruled for 3 millennia. He gestured toward the Sovereign. Under the control of those who recognized our absence as an opportunity for power. The Sovereign's holographic form flickered with barely contained rage. You abandoned your responsibility to these worlds. When you disappeared, chaos followed. The Empire brought order and stability. At what cost? Rodriguez's voice reverberated through the chamber, no longer entirely human. Stagnation, cultural homogenization, the suppression of evolutionary diversity. The very qualities that make the galaxy resilient against true threats. Tilera's crystalline form pulsed rapidly as she processed these revelations. The stellar anomalies. If you're already here, what's causing them? For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Rodriguez's face. We are not the only ancient force in this galaxy. Our awakening has roused something else, something we once fought to contain. The patterns you see in the stars are ripples of its approach. The truth finally dawned on Shivrak with stunning clarity. You need us, he said, straightening to his full height. For all your power, you need the Empire's resources, our established networks, our military capabilities. Yes, Rodriguez acknowledged without shame. Humanity alone cannot stand against what comes. Even with our awakened abilities, we require allies. A united galaxy, as existed during the Golden Era. The Sovereign's holographic image distorted violently. This is manipulation. They seek to usurp imperial authority, to replace our rule with their own. Rodriguez turned to face the Sovereign directly. We seek partnership, not control. The threat approaching makes our past conflicts seem insignificant. We offer humanity as the bridge between what we were and what the Empire has become. As if on cue, the chamber's auxiliary displays activated, showing real-time feeds from across Imperial space. Human vessels were making contact with Imperial outposts, not with weapons but with data transmissions, the same stellar anomaly data that Rodriguez had shared. Even now, Dr. Harper explained, we're distributing sensor recalibration protocols throughout Imperial space. Your people deserve to see the truth for themselves. The Sovereign's image loomed larger, his ancient features contorted with fury. I have ruled for 7,000 years. I will not surrender the Empire to. His transmission cut off abruptly, replaced by a new image that caused gasps throughout the chamber. The Imperial throne room appeared on the display, but the massive throne itself stood empty. In its place stood Admiral Chen, flanked by both human officers and, astonishingly, high-ranking Imperial officials. Grand Admiral Shivrak. Chen addressed him directly. The Sovereign has been temporarily relieved of authority by unanimous vote of the Imperial High Council. His resistance to addressing this existential threat has been deemed detrimental to galactic security. Elder Van Loo began to laugh, not his usual mischievous chuckle, but deep, genuine laughter born of incredible relief. 3,000 years of stagnation ends today, he wheezed, tears streaming from his ancient eyes. Not with war, but with revelation. Shivrak looked from the display to Rodriguez, understanding finally dawning. This was your plan all along. Not conquest, not revenge. Reunification. Rodriguez finished, his eyes gradually returning to human appearance as he extended his hand toward the Grand Admiral. The Gardeners and the Empire, united once more against the coming storm. Javrak's appendages trembled slightly as he reached out to grasp Rodriguez's extended hand. The gesture, so simple, so human, felt somehow monumental, as if the weight of galactic history pivoted on this single point of contact. "The Conclave will have questions," Javrak said, his voice steadier than he expected. "Thousands of questions." Rodriguez nodded, a hint of his earlier diplomatic demeanor returning. "And we'll answer them all. Transparency is the foundation of what comes next." The command center had transformed from a war room to something entirely different, a nexus of frantic but purposeful activity as Imperial officers worked alongside the human delegation. Dr. Harper stood with Tilara, guiding the science minister through the recalibration of the Imperial sensor network, their differences momentarily set aside in pursuit of shared understanding. "What of the Sovereign?" War Chief Grax asked, his aggressive posture now replaced by wary acceptance. 7,000 years of rule doesn't end without complications. Admiral Chen's image still dominated the central display. "The Sovereign has been secured, not harmed," she assured them. "His knowledge remains valuable, even if his intentions became corrupted by power. The Imperial High Council has established an interim governance structure until more permanent arrangements can be negotiated." Elder Venlo hobbled forward, his ancient eyes bright with an emotion that had been absent from the Empire for millennia. "Hope. I've lived long enough to see full circle," he mused, tapping his staff thoughtfully. "From the fading echoes of the Golden Era to its potential rebirth, though I suspect what comes next will be something entirely new." Rodriguez smiled. "As it should be. We didn't return to restore the past, but to ensure there's a future." The holographic displays surrounding them shifted to real-time feeds from across Imperial space. On 1,000 worlds, Imperial citizens gazed upward at skies suddenly filled with the impossible. Human vessels appearing in orbits previously thought secure, not as invaders, but as harbingers of transformation. And beyond them, visible now to recalibrated sensors, the distant stellar anomalies continued their ominous dance. "How long do we have?" Javrak asked quietly. "Before whatever's causing those patterns arrives." "Months, perhaps a year," Rodriguez replied, his expression solemn. "Not long by either of our species' standards. But together, with the full industrial and technological capacity of the Empire combined with what humanity remembers, it may be enough." Ambassador Lyertan, who had remained silent throughout the revelations, finally spoke. "And what happens when this threat is confronted? Will the custodians withdraw again, leaving us to decay as before?" Rodriguez exchanged glances with Dr. Harper before answering. "No, the cycle of guidance and withdrawal was our error. We believed independence would foster growth, but instead it allowed power to concentrate and progress to stagnate. This time, we integrate fully, humans and custodians, Empire and Earth, moving forward as genuine partners." As if in response to his words, new alerts flashed across the command interfaces. Imperial citizens were responding to the human presence not with fear, but with curiosity, even celebration in some sectors. 3 millennia of rigid Imperial control had not completely extinguished the desire for change. Javrak straightened, suddenly aware of his place in history. "Then we should begin immediately. The Empire's resources are at your disposal, Envoy Rodriguez, or whatever name most accurately reflects what you truly are." Rodriguez smiled, the light of distant stars still faintly visible in his eyes. "Rodriguez will do fine. We are still human after all, just humans who finally remembered our greater purpose." He turned to face the assembled Imperial leadership. "Now let's prepare the galaxy for what comes next." Outside the command center's viewports, the first light of a new day broke over the Imperial capital. For the first time in 3,000 years, its rays illuminated not just an empire, but the beginning of something far greater, a reunification that would echo across the stars and into whatever uncertain future awaited them all.